Hi everyone, my name is Kenzie and welcome to a watercolor tutorial, and today we're going to be painting this little bear in cub. This one was so fun to create. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of layering. If you want to just focus on the painting itself and not worry about the sketching, which is the hardest part, go to the description below where you'll find a link to my website where you can download and print off the sketch for this painting, and it also comes with an ebook as well where I've broken it down step by step. Let's get started on the painting. So this right here is my Winsor Newton watercolor paints that I have taken from the tube and put it inside this palette that I got off of Amazon. I have a tapping cloth right here. It's always good to have one. That way you don't have excess water on your page. I also have my two water cups right here. One I use for cool paints and one I use for my warmer paint colors. I also have right here my dryer. I like to use this to speed up the process between layers. These are the brushes that I use. These are the silver black velvet. I have size 12, 4, and 8, and these are the round tip brushes. I'm using this painting as an example. I always like to have painter's tape on hand. I like to paint down my paintings. It's easier to one, film, and to also just keep everything from moving around and it getting a little messy. It also helps to protect your desk, which you'll see mine is very worn. So it definitely does help with that. I can't tell you how excited I am to paint this. I think it is so cute. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in my brown colors. I'm mixing a little bit of gray in here. Let's do a little bit of a reddish undertone because why not? I'm going to add a lot of water because this is my first layer. You always want to start with your lightest layers first. And we're going to start painting. Okay, so with my wash of my color, I'm going to come around the edges of my bear. I'm going to get rid of everything on my brush. I'm going to scoop. I'm going to use a different brush, especially over here, because that's where there's going to be a highlight. I'm going to scoop up so there's a nice blend of my color. I can even come in with a little bit more of a pigmented brown, and then just really loosely touch different points and let that bleed. Not worrying so much about my lines. I can again come in with an even darker color while it's still red. Not red, I was looking at red. While it's still wet. I don't like that black, but I can come in with a little bit more of a red, especially in here while it's wet. And then in here we can come in with a darker color using some water to just blend this out. And then we can touch it with some darkness because that's where the hand starts to kind of curve in. Having some shadows in here as well, around the tummy area. Okay, now switching back to more of a lighter brown over here, I'm going to pull this color all the way up, and you'll see that I have some ink marks right here. This is to kind of stop you from going over because we're going to be working in layers over here. So this area I want it to be nice and light and brown. So I'm using some water just to kind of pull it through. Over here I want it to be light. So as we get closer to this part of the arm, I'm going to be pulling in some lighter browns, leaving a nice highlighted area. So this might look a little messy. There is a vision, I promise. And then for the chest area, I am going to come in and just make it a little bit of a darker brown around my little cub. See, I've just left a little bit of white space right there. That's kind of on purpose to help me remember that this is where I'm going to have the crease be for the arm. And then coming around the mouth. And right in here, using the color that I already have down, I'm going to get rid of everything on my brush and just use a damp brush to just drag out the rest of that color that I have over here. Okay, that would be our first layer for our bear. And in here, I'm going to skip this row right here, and I'm going to come in with a lighter brown. And I'm just going to do some light flicks, making sure I'm leaving a nice highlight. So I just scooped up a little bit of my color there because it was just a little bit too dark. Again, I'm going to leave right here because I want to give this enough time to dry. I'm going to come into my bear's ear in here. So right in here, I'm going to apply that nice brown color. It's pretty wet, so I can scoop up some of that color. And then with a little bit more darkness, I want to just come along and just touch right in here and let that naturally bleed out. Where's that red? Add a little bit more red in here. And then I'll do that with the other side of the ear. So I'm coming in with a nice wash of my brown. I'm gonna scoop up so I have a nice highlight. And then with a darker brown color, I'm just gonna come in and just touch and let that bleed. Let that bleed out. That's too black. I'm just gonna blend that out as well into my brown. Okay, so the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start coming around his little eye. So especially around here. So I'm gonna follow around the eye just like that. I'm gonna leave this area nice and light. So I'm gonna leave a nice little gap. And then I'm gonna scoop so that there's just a nice blend of my color. I'm gonna repeat this on the other side, going around the eyes. It's gonna be a darker brown color right in here to let that bleed and blend out. And I'm gonna let that side be. Around this nice top area, I'm gonna do some nice flicks because this part would be a natural shadow. Around the bear's little eyebrows, there'll be a natural shadow. And then all in here will be darker. So right now I'm just focusing on those dark points that the bear has. Putting those first layers down. Okay, so now moving on, I want to add a little bit more of a yellow undertone for the face. So I'm going to add some yellow into the brown that I have mixed. And then when I come around this side of the face, I want to leave a little bit of a gap right here. I'm going to come in doing the same thing as before, just kind of filling it out. And then around this side, I'm going to get rid of everything on my brush. And I'm just going to start kind of blending inwards. So there's a soft blend with a highlight. And then right in here, I'm going to use just some water to blend it out towards this ink mark that I have right here, because there's going to be a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to come in with a little bit darker brown underneath the ear, and then touch right in here and let that blend out. Using more of a reddish undertone, I'm going to come in and just touch around here just to give a little bit more depth. I'm using that wet on wet technique. Okay, using a nice light brown. Again, I'm going to come in here using some water to blend. I want to make sure I'm leaving up here nice and open but blended. I want to make sure it's blended. And just tapping while it's wet to have some depth in some parts. And then around its little nose area in here, I'm going to put some shadows down. Just a nice light wash of a brown. And then this part down here, I want this, because the light's hitting the bear this way, so right in here I want it to be lighter. So I'm going to come in with a nice light brown. I'm going to blend this out because it's a little bit too dark. So now that these two sections have had time to dry, I can put this color down with no problems. I'm going to use that wet on wet technique by just bringing in a darker brown color. And then I'm going to come in with some brown, but I'm just going to leave some white space under there. And now what I can do is, coming in around the arm, I can start to kind of put some second layers down, especially right under where there should be a nice shadow. So I'm just going to do some flicks to make it look like some fur. And then in here, I'm going to add, so the trick here is to make sure you're letting that first layer shine through. So I'm leaving lots of gaps, lots of white space. Mixing up different light tones when I'm going over the light section, darker tones when I'm going over the darker section. Oh, that's a little too dark right here. I'm just going to blend it out. Mix up a darker brown. So I'm coming underneath that little neckline and just adding some light flecks as well. Different areas. Okay, I'm going to come in and just do a little bit of darkness up in here by its face and its ear. Coming in with some nice light flicks. So I'm going to mix up the nose color now. I'm going to mix up a bit of gray into this light brown color that I have. And then I'm going to come in with a wash of that color. So a lot more water. And I'm going to come in and apply it on the snout area. Gonna have it be darker around its mouth. I'm gonna mix a little bit of indigo and black. So it's not just pure black. I'm gonna come in and do the nose. I'm gonna use water to blend it out. I'm gonna come in while it's still wet. Just touch different areas with some darkness. And around its little eye in here, I'm going to do some nice flecks for the brown. Okay, so for the eye, underneath my ink mark, it's going to be a lot darker. So I'm going to come in around the eyebrow area with a lot more darker brown. And stopping around where my ink marks actually are. So all in here will be nice and dark. And now all in here will also be nice and dark. I'm gonna let that dry. Do some flicks coming around the eye. Okay, I have to let that dry before I can do anything else. But what I am going to come in and do is for the eyes underneath, I'm going to come in with a nice gray color. So it's nice and gray. And then the outside of the eye will be a little bit dark. So I'm going to come in with some black. I'm going to touch it while it's still wet underneath. Meanwhile, leaving some white space as well. Okay, I have to let that dry because I can already tell it's starting to merge a bit. So the top lip, I'm going to have it be darker. So I'm going to come in with a little bit more of a pigmented black. And then coming in around the little nose, I'm going to shadow as well, blending it out. And then when I come in to do the inside of the eye as well, I want to make sure that I'm leaving a bit of white space so that it looks like the eyes are kind of glistening a little bit. And with a gray, I can come in, oh, that's really dark. With a nice soft gray, I can come in and just kind of layer a little bit over here, a little bit more. I'm going to come in and do a bit of gray around the lip. Okay, so I feel like at this point I've done a lot of my first layers and I'm feeling pretty happy with where my bear is at. So I'm gonna let this dry and then I can come in with more layers in depth, and I can also come in and do similar techniques with my little bear down below. Okay, so you know what I'm thinking I might do? I'm thinking I want to paint the baby bear as well. And just so that it stands out, I want it to be a little bit darker than what I have. I'm gonna add a little bit of red in here as well. Okay, so just similar things. I'm gonna have my light source still be around this side, and I'm gonna come in nice and light. And I'm gonna fill out his little arms, or her little arms. And I'm gonna blend out this harsh line that I have. I'm gonna come in with a dark brown. I'm gonna touch around, especially around the crease right in here, letting that do that wet on wet technique. And then stopping towards that ink mark right in here. I'm gonna come in and do the other side, stopping at the ink mark. I'm gonna bring it down. I'm gonna keep touching. Okay, I'm gonna go around up here with that lighter brown color, going around his eyebrows, and I'm gonna blend this out, going upwards and flicking so that I have a nice highlight towards the top. And I'm gonna bring in a little bit of that nice color towards the head, leaving some white space. I'm gonna come around the ears, and I'm gonna come around right underneath that middle ink mark. And then right under his the side of his nose, under the eye here, I'm gonna have it a little bit darker. Then underneath its little chin right in here, I'll have it. I'll blend it out to that ink mark right here as well. Okay, I can come around the ears. Okay, I'm coming around the body, and then I'm going to leave a little bit of a nice highlight towards the middle of the chest as well. And then underneath where the legs are, I'm going to come in and put it in like this. And again, just kind of blending it out a little bit, but I do want it to be darker just because it's supposed to be underneath its arm, its little legs. And then I can fill in its paws as well, right in here. So I can use a little bit of this gray color that I used for the bigger bear. And I'm going to come mostly down towards the middle, towards the nose, and I'm going to blend out this color. And then I'm going to use this color as well to come around. And this will just help with the curvature of this area, making sure that we're leaving lots of white space. I'm going to come around its little mouth, and I'm going to shadow and under and just above it underneath the nose. Again, I left some white space. I'm even going to scoop up a little bit just to blend it that much more. I'm going to touch underneath the nose with some more pigmented black. And all of this is going to be brown and brown. I just got to let that dry. Okay, so now that I have pretty much all the first layers other than the eyes done, I just want to make sure the nose area has enough time to dry before I start putting more definition down. I can come in and I can start working on my bear's eyes. So I'm going to come in with a gray, and I'm going to come right underneath in here, the corner of the eye. I'm going to blend it out, and then I'm going to come towards the corner of the eye, and with some damp brush I'm going to blend this out as well. I'm also going to, like, I've left some white space between the eye and then I guess the bags under the eye. I'm going to just add a little bit more depth, and I'm going to pull it out and pull it down. And then I'm going to pull it out and pull it down. And with this darker color as well, I'm going to come in and start to drag it down. And then I can come in with more browns and just do more layers. I can come around, especially around the face, and just add a bit more love and definition around the face, blending out harsh lines. Okay, I'm gonna come a little bit more with this color around. So at this point, this is all just about personal preference, and we're gonna be paying attention to your light sources and your darker sources, and then just doing lots of little layers in order to kind of bring this bear to life. So when I'm looking, I'm making sure that whenever I'm applying more layers, I'm not completely covering the layers that were already there before. So I'm definitely paying attention to that. I'm looking for around the bear, like where would my shadow spots be? So definitely right here on the forehead, there'd be darker spots along the top, and then even around its mouth area down here, there would be darker fur. Around the necks, that's where we'd have some nice highlight and some shadows as well, where the rolls of the fur would be. And then in around here, but I'm also making sure that I'm leaving a highlight as well. Otherwise, I just have one big blob as a bear. So I'm trying to just definitely have some depth and definition within my bear. I come in and just add some underneath the neck. I'm also going to pull a little bit more over here of this. It's more like a red undertone that I have here. Just blending it out. And then I'm coming in with a more stronger brown and gray mixed together. And I'm definitely going to take advantage of this darker color in some spots by just adding a little bit more depth and shadow in some areas. And this will really start to help make his little features pop by adding these. Coming in with that darker color as well into the ears. Okay, I want to put a little bit more definition into my nose. I think that will really just help make this pop. I'm going to fill in the white space. I'm going to come in with a little bit more of the pigment here. For the nose, I'm going to come around. Okay, I want the eye to pop a little bit more. That's where I feel like it's lacking a little bit. So I'm gonna come around right in here where the eye would be with a jarring black. And I'm gonna apply that in here. And then in the corner in here, I'm gonna put it as well. And then right underneath, I'm gonna leave some white space. And I'm gonna blend out this one. Okay, and then for the little guy, I'm just gonna come in and fill out his eye with a bit of gray, leaving a bit of white space. I'm gonna shadow a little bit below into the side of its nose, I'm gonna come in with this gray color and fill out the sides. Where the fluff would be, definitely towards the inside right in here. And then it's all just about your layering, your different tones. Try to just bring your painting to life. Same thing as the other bear, the big bear. It's just about rotating between your different brown colors to just make this little cub come to life. So you'll see I'm just jumping around my cub. This is me just filling in and leaving some spots to dry as I go. Like I'm coming around the face, and then I can't come in and do much more until this is dried, otherwise everything will just keep bleeding out. So then I'll come and I'll do more layers down here. I'll come under the tummy and add more layers. I'm gonna come up here and add more layers. So I'm gonna dry my little cub. And I wanna add a little bit more water, so this is more of a wash. I wanna come in and just make my white space up top a little bit smaller, especially over here too. There's just too much white space. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna dry this again so that I can come in and do my eyes. So with a more pigmented black, I'm gonna come in and fill out my little eye a little bit more. And then I'm just filling out the nose, same thing as I did with the big bear. And I'm just coming around while it's wet and just doing that wet on wet technique. And just letting that bleed and blend out in certain areas. I want to add a little bit more shadow down here. So yeah, right now at this point, I can definitely see that my little bear is coming to life. I definitely want to fix a few spots, especially around the eyes, so it's not just so like in my face. I think it's just a little bit too dull around there, so I have to let this dry before I can do anything else. Okay, so now that the eye area is dry, I want to come in and just make it stand out that much more. So I'm coming in with a lot more pigment versus water on my brush. I'm going to pick up a lot of the black. And I'm going to come in now and I'm going to go right above the eye. It's a lot of water. And I'm going to pull it all the way down. And then I'm going to come around this eye. And I'm going to go under the eye socket as well. And I'm going to go under the eye socket in here. And I'm going to blend and drag this out. And for the little guy, I'm going to come in and do the same. I'm going to come in. Now this little cub has got big eyes. I'm going to put a little bit more detail around the nose. I also want to add a bit of body right down here as well. So just mix a little bit of a darker color. I'm just going to pull this bare body down. I feel like it was just missing something right in here. So I'm going to freehand that. Going to bring in some darkness. I'm going to touch it so there's a nice shadow underneath the arm. There we go. I feel like that looks a lot better. And then I'm just going to come in and just add a few more little lines and details around the arms here. I'm going to go around the little ear and give it some nice flicks on the inside of the ear over here. I want to have this little nose just stand out that much more, so I'm going to blur in this. And then underneath my big bear right in here, I'm just going to add a little bit more depth so that my little baby bear stands out a little bit more. Just doing some nice big flicks. Can even do some big flicks in this bear as well, so it looks similar. Gonna add some more depth in here. I'm gonna go underneath this little mouth area right in there. I'm gonna shadow these areas underneath the ear. So these are just the little fine details that's just gonna make your bear pop and make it feel just a little bit more realistic. trying to think if there's anything else. You know, I'm feeling pretty good about this since this is just a loose interpretation of a bear. So it's just all about letting your layers dry and then just doing more layers, making sure everything is blending out. I'm gonna come in and I just wanna make this eye stand out just a little bit more in here. Okay, I think this is pretty good. So if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button. I'd love to see and paint with you all again soon. Happy painting, friends!